The music stopped before the bride ever reached the altar. Hundreds of eyes turned toward the church doors as Emily stood frozen in her white dress, staring at the empty space where her groom was supposed to be. Her hands trembled around a bouquet of white roses, and somewhere in the back of the church, a phone buzzed with the message that would destroy the life she had planned for herself. Daniel had left. He was gone. No explanation. No goodbye. Just gone. And then, while everyone whispered and Emily fought desperately to keep herself from falling apart, her best friend Noah stood up from the front row, walked slowly toward her, and did something nobody in that church could have imagined. He stopped beside her, looked into her tear-filled eyes, and quietly asked, "Will you marry me?" Before we continue, if stories about second chances, unexpected love, friendship, and the moments that change our lives mean something to you, please like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to Kidness Studio for more stories about second chances. Emily and Noah had been best friends since they were 17. They had grown up together, survived awkward school years, celebrated each other's victories, and stood beside each other through heartbreak. Noah had always been the person Emily called when life became too heavy. When her father passed away, Noah had sat beside her on the hospital steps until sunrise. When Emily lost her first job, he reminded her that one failure could never define her. And when she met Daniel, Noah had smiled, congratulated her, and stepped quietly into the background. Emily never understood why Noah became quieter after her engagement. She assumed he was simply happy for her but busy with his own life. The truth was much harder. Noah had loved Emily for years, but he had never told her. He was terrified that one confession would destroy the friendship that meant more to him than anything else. So he watched Emily fall in love with Daniel. He helped her choose flowers. He carried boxes when she moved into her apartment. He even stood beside Daniel during the wedding rehearsal, pretending his heart wasn't breaking. On the morning of the wedding, Emily had called Noah before anyone else. She had been nervous, excited, and overwhelmed. She told him she couldn't believe the day had finally arrived. Noah had smiled through the phone and told her that everything would be beautiful. What he didn't tell her was that he had spent the entire night wondering whether this would be the last day he would ever have Emily in his life. The church was decorated exactly the way Emily had dreamed. Soft white flowers lined the aisle. Tiny lights shimmered above the guests. Her mother sat in the front row with tears of happiness in her eyes. Everyone was ready for the bride and groom. Everyone except Daniel. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Then 30. The wedding coordinator kept checking her phone. Daniel's best man disappeared into the parking lot. Guests began whispering. Emily stood in a private room behind the church, still holding her bouquet, asking the same question over and over, "Where is he?" Then the truth arrived. Daniel had left a message saying he couldn't go through with the wedding. That was all. Emily read it 3 times before the words finally became real. She felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath her. Her wedding dress suddenly felt heavy. The flowers in her hands no longer looked beautiful. They looked like a reminder of everything she had believed was waiting for her. When she finally walked into the church, she wasn't a bride anymore. She was simply a woman trying not to break in front of hundreds of people. Some guests looked away because they didn't know what to say. Others whispered behind their hands. Emily could hear fragments of cruel questions. What happened? Did she know? Was there someone else? She wished the floor would open and swallow her. Then she saw Noah. He wasn't whispering. He wasn't staring. He was looking at her the way he always had, with kindness. Noah stood and walked toward her. Every step felt impossibly loud in the silent church. He reached her side and took a slow breath. He knew what he was about to say could change everything between them forever. Then he asked her to marry him. The church went completely silent. Emily stared at him as tears rolled down her cheeks. She thought he was trying to rescue her from embarrassment. She told him he didn't have to do this. She told him she couldn't let him sacrifice his life because someone else had broken her heart. But Noah wasn't joking, and he wasn't trying to save the wedding. He told her that he wasn't asking her to forget Daniel. He wasn't asking her to make a decision while she was hurting. He was simply asking her to consider one truth she had never allowed herself to see: someone had been standing beside her all along. Emily couldn't answer. Instead, she walked away. For the next several weeks, Emily barely left her apartment. The wedding photographs disappeared into a drawer. Her dress was packed away. She stopped answering most calls because every conversation eventually became about Daniel. Noah didn't pressure her. He simply stayed. He brought groceries when she forgot to eat. He repaired the broken kitchen cabinet she had ignored for months. Sometimes he sat across from her drinking coffee while they talked about completely ordinary things. He never mentioned the proposal unless Emily brought it up. Slowly, something changed. Emily began remembering the little things she had overlooked. Noah knew exactly how she took her coffee. He remembered the name of her childhood dog. He knew she hated thunderstorms and loved old movies. He had been there during every difficult chapter without demanding anything in return. One evening, nearly 2 months after the wedding disaster, Emily found the courage to ask him why he had proposed. Noah looked at her for a long moment before admitting that he had loved her for years. But he had kept silent because he would rather remain her friend than risk losing her completely. Emily cried, not because she was heartbroken this time, but because she suddenly understood how long someone had been quietly choosing her. She didn't immediately say yes. Instead, she told Noah she needed time. And Noah gave it to her. They started again, not as bride and groom, but as two best friends learning what it meant to see each other differently. They went for walks. They laughed again. They talked about fears they had never shared. There were no grand promises and no rushed decisions. 6 months later, Emily returned to the same church. This time, there were no decorations waiting for a wedding that might collapse. There was no nervous groom hiding somewhere. There were no whispers. There were simply two people standing together because they had chosen each other freely. Emily walked down the aisle wearing a simple ivory dress, with her mother beside her. At the end stood Noah, smiling through tears. When she reached him, she took his hands and whispered that she finally understood something. Sometimes life doesn't give us the person we thought we needed. Sometimes it removes the wrong person so we can finally recognize the one who never stopped standing beside us. Their wedding wasn't perfect. It wasn't the wedding Emily had planned. It was something better. It was honest. Years later, Emily would still remember the day she was left at the altar. But she no longer remembered it as the day her life fell apart. She remembered it as the day her life changed direction. Because sometimes the ending that breaks your heart is secretly opening the door to a beginning you never imagined. And sometimes the person you spend years calling your best friend is the person who has been quietly holding the pieces of your heart without ever asking for anything in return. If this story touched your heart, please don't just watch and leave. Like the video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Kidness Studio. Your support helps these emotional stories reach people who may need their own reminder that one painful ending does not mean the story is over. And before the story ends, tell us in the comments, do you believe the person who stays beside you during your hardest moments could become your greatest second chance? Write second chance if this story touched your heart. Because sometimes, the person who walks away changes your life. But the person who stays might be the reason you finally learn how beautiful life can become.